So recently I was reminiscing over some of the terrible reality TV I watched growing up, and I remembered that they all literally came from the same network known as Channel 4, a company that just showed reruns of Friends and Scrubs until the late 2000s, when it out of nowhere produced 3 generation-defining shows within the space of 3 years. However, it does seem like the person that commissioned those shows has quit their job, and now they're back to showing reruns of The Big Bang Theory and Brooklyn Nine-Nine, so unless you're a white woman who's just plain boring, I mean, you could see that as an upgrade. But I decided to cast my mind back to a period of time that I don't remember because I was a toddler, and search through the Channel 4 archives for some of the worst reality TV shows I could find. And the fact that they thought a lot of this stuff was a good idea to make is just insane. Oh, and you've probably, if you're not from the UK, you've probably heard that show of like lads getting their choppers out. It's like that show, yeah, that's made by the same network. Just for reference as to how, like, this is a continued pattern of just pure psychopathic behaviour. Introducing Shattered, the 2004 week-long social experiment where contestants attempted to stay awake for an entire 7 days while locked inside of a lab. They would also compete in tasks that would test their reactions. The challenges would take place between 2 and 4 AM, as that is when the body is longing for sleep the most. The prize pot was £100,000, but it would drop by £1,000 every time a contestant closed their eyes for more than 10 seconds. It was presented by Dermot O'Leary, who would go on to become a presenter of The X Factor and probably the most iconic name in British TV. So we just call this one a rough start. The first episode it's kind of a mess. It introduces the contestants like every reality show, but for half the program it shows VTs specifically stating as to why this show running is a terrible idea. Here's everything you need to know about sleep. Here's us testing it on 4 people in the Big Brother house. Here's Dermot going 24 hours without sleep. And it's all of them just going, this is a terrible thing to do. Don't do it. I mean, if you ever wanted a warning to not do something, it was brilliant. The test subjects, as they're referred to, kind of have nothing on the reality stars of today, though. There's a lot more innocence in this program, as there's kind of nothing to gain from this. There's no really narcissism or dreams of achieving anything. There's really just a lust for money and intrigue. The experiment is only referred to for about a quarter of the episode. Sorry about that, I was just convinced someone was breaking into my house. The experiment is referred to for about half the episode. The other half is, of course, the natural introduction of all of the contestants, and then the first challenge, which is where it's counting frozen peas. Then there was another challenge, and the people that finished in the bottom 4 in that one had to proceed to the elimination room, where they had to announce the amount of peas they had counted, and the closest to their specific number would be safe. And as usual in 2000s reality show style, some random lass who thought she was going to win got booted off in the first round. So you may be thinking, 1 challenge a day and a bunch of tired people. I don't see the mass appeal of this show. Well, let me introduce to you the You Snooze, You Lose challenge. A series of challenges in which a contestant was taken into a side room and tasked with not falling asleep during the challenge. These activities included a relaxing facial massage, cuddling a giant teddy bear, a bedtime story repeated again and again and again, watching paint dry in a warm, comfy chair, counting sheep on a television, and a lecture on triangles that they had already seen earlier in the week. It's kind of just mocking people at their lowest points, but in a way that even they would look back on and find hilarious. There's no trauma from this experience. It's like you watch 12 people with sleep paralysis watch a lecture on circles and adjectives. It's whoever came up with this is a genius. I, for one, would love to know the Channel 4 execs dealer, because that seems like some hard shit. What place do you have to be in life to stand there and watch a sleep-deprived 20-something cuddle a teddy bear as you film them and think, you know what? I'm proud of what I've done. Surely there's got to be some questioning of life choices in this situation. I also went to this show's Wikipedia page after watching the first episode, and it might be better than anything IMDb has produced. The line, Claire told stories of when she was arm wrestling with Irish boxer Joey Ruin, sold the entire thing to me. So as you can imagine, a show based around sleep deprivation, you'd have a couple of contestants that proceeded to hallucinate. Not Claire though, she was just on the producer's Charlie. Chris believed he was the Prime Minister of Australia and also believed that he was on the set of famous Australian soap Neighbours, as well as Jimmy getting angry when the others refused to put on their Japanese armour and play with an imaginary ball. These outbursts happen among many These outbursts happen upon many who do not put on their Japanese armour. These outbursts happen among many other contestants as they were suffering from hypnagogia and hypnopompia. These are basically you dreaming whilst you're awake. It's something that happens pre and post sleep, so you may have experienced it in your life, and it's not a showcasing of psychopathic behaviour in case none of you were wondering that, were you? I just wanted to say it. And to add to that, Lucy walked out after 75 hours because she heard H&M had a sale on. You may be hearing all of these white people names flung at you and think it's some sort of second year uni production cast, but I can promise you that these are the contestants. However, I don't really feel like I need to introduce you to many of them, because the VTs are nothing special, and they don't come across as twats, they just come across as nice people, and even though their moods and their attitudes do change throughout the series, you know, it's not like Love Island. Like, I can justify calling someone Love Island a prick because they're not going through anything hard, whereas these people literally haven't slept for a week. They all come from, like, well-established jobs and are kind of just intrigued in testing themselves and intrigued by the challenge. But 3 names I want you to remember now are Jonathan, Chris, and Claire. The reason I picked back up on the show was because a couple of years ago, some articles were wrote and people were interviewed to commemorate the 15-year anniversary of the experiment. Most notably Claire and I believe Chris. So after all the other contestants were eliminated, the prize fund stood at £97,000 as 3 people had taken illegal sleep. Also, just for preface, due to healthcare reasons, I believe they slept an hour a night, basically so they didn't have heart attacks. So on the final day, at 3:45 in the afternoon, the contestants were sent to bed. The show usually airs at around 9 or 10 o'clock in the evening, just to give you a kind of time scale of what that's like. So basically, the last person to stay awake would win. Leading up to that challenge, Jonathan, Chris and Claire had kind of all fallen out with each other. You really, in normal human understandings, those arguments wouldn't have happened, but it's kind of understandable to see why. Claire was referred to as the Terminator. She was a 19-year-old police cadet at the time, and I'm not going to challenge her being given that name, as 12 minutes into the challenge, Jonathan and Chris both fell asleep within a quarter of a second of each other. Claire stayed awake for another 2.5 hours, and she was actually put to sleep by the producers because they believed that she was actually having a seizure, when really she was just pointing to the bathroom by nodding her head, believing that if she talked, she'd be kicked out of the competition. But this is where it gets interesting. So Claire wins the £97,000, but in these articles a couple years later, the most notable one is with The Guardian. Of course, people complained and it said it was misconceived and it was dangerous, and it was based off the fact that an American DJ called Peter Trapp had a breakdown after he stayed awake for 201 hours in 1959. It's kind of the whole point the show was made. It was to see if someone could break that record. But due to the obvious reasoning of he had a mental breakdown, they didn't go for that. Claire actually only stayed awake for 178 hours. It was a wave of social experiment shows like Big Brother and Space Cadets. It was kind of Channel 4 just being Channel 4, really. There's nothing, snake-like. It's kind of just it's out of interest, and it's kind of just filling a slot and giving people jobs, and I think that's an attitude that really doesn't stand up today. Chris was kind of becoming a bit of a pain in the arse by the end of the show, and he was actually also interviewed. He didn't really do a photo shoot for this or anything. He didn't interview, and the reason he didn't do a photo shoot was he was just chatting shit. He was still 15 years on, angry at the fact that he lost this challenge. He believes that the only reason Claire stayed awake was that she was giving herself cramp during the week, and then before the final challenge, she filled her bladder up with liquid because they weren't allowed to make any food or drink anything. They weren't really allowed to make any meals or drink any coffee or anything because they could only drink water, in case they burnt themselves or anything. He believes Claire filled her bladder up to full, to the point where she'd be in pain, and that it was the pain that kept her awake. And even she said, if I was injured, I wouldn't have been cheated. The show kind of seems Like the prime example of reality TV in the 2000s, it's not the contestants hyper aware of their character, it's people allowed to go on TV and present themselves in their natural manner, which in Britain at the time wasn't really allowed. The guy who produced the show went on to produce Big Brother, which, if you don't know, kind of started in the UK and became a worldwide success. And he looked at something different, however, due to Ofcom regulations and everything that goes on in modern day Britain, it's something that wouldn't be achievable. The series remains as a standalone in the first real big social experiment that tested someone's just overall body. Even though it was seen as gimmicky and it wasn't really scientific, it taught a lot of people about how necessary things were. The entire series is on YouTube. Would I recommend binge watching it? Absolutely not. I watched one episode at a time because I felt incredibly drowsy after hearing about sleep for a prolonged period of time. And I don't know if that's scientific. I'm not going to Google whether it is because I'm currently sat here in front of a news article with Chris Wandle's face just looking very glum. One of the people who was on an ethics board, because you need an ethics board to run a show like that, she said that when it began, she was kind of up for it and she thought that it was a really good concept. And then when the show started and she saw how gimmicky it was, it kind of just felt like a box-ticking exercise, which you can kind of understand from a healthcare professional's point of view. It's kind of probably how someone who works in the music industry felt when Pop Idol or X Factor were taking off. It's kind of taking a serious thing like the music industry or the concept and science behind sleep and turning it into something that could be made into entertainment instead of sticking to the core roots of that subject. It's a once-in-a-lifetime revolution. We will never see it again. If you want to go and check out the series, I'll leave a link to the first episode and they go through on autoplay anyway. I really like the show. I think it was a really smart thing to do. Others have tried things like you go live in 10,000 BC or, you do a bunch of other stuff and it's never really worked. It just doesn't really feel natural. Whereas this, it's natural, it's scientific in a way as much as it is gimmicky. And even though you're not giving the British public the hard facts, the public probably took in as much information as they could possess. But thank you very much for watching this video. If you did enjoy, please do leave a like. I'll leave a link to the show in the description if you do want to watch it. I really enjoy making this video. If you don't know, I'm a media student, so kind of looking back and looking at the way reality TV shows run when I have to study them today, oh god, it's a very interesting thing for me to do. But anyway, make sure you like and subscribe with notifications on so you never miss a video. My links to my Twitter and Instagram are down in the description as always, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.